On the night of December 7th, 1942, 10 Royal Marines climbed into canvas kayaks from a submarine in the freezing Atlantic. Their mission was to paddle 70 miles up the Gironde River through enemy territory to Bordeaux harbour, attach explosives to German cargo ships and escape across France to Spain. Of those 10 men, only 2 would make it home alive. 6 were captured and executed. 2 drowned in icy water. This is the story of Operation Frankton. The raid, Winston Churchill said, shortened World War II by 6 months. Bordeaux was a problem the British could not solve. The port sat 70 miles inland from the Atlantic coast. German ships carrying rubber, tin and other materials from the Far East were using it to resupply the Nazi war machine. These cargo ships were sneaking past Allied naval forces and keeping Germany's eastern front supplied. The port had heavy defences. Anti-aircraft guns surrounded the area and 32 German naval vessels patrolled the waters. Any normal attack by air or sea would cost hundreds of lives and probably fail. Britain needed a different approach. Major Herbert Blondie Hasler had an idea. Hasler was only 28 years old, a Royal Marines officer who'd spent his childhood building canoes from magazine instructions. He had served in Norway in 1940 and earned an OBE for his actions. Now he commanded a small unit called the Royal Marine Boom Patrol Detachment. In September 1942, Hasler submitted a plan to the British Naval Command. He proposed using collapsible kayaks launched from a submarine. A small team would paddle upriver at night, hide during the day, reach Bordeaux, plant magnetic mines on the German ships, and escape overland to Spain. Naval Command thought he was insane. But Admiral Louis Mountbatten, Chief of Combined Operations, saw potential. Mountbatten approved the raid in October 1942 and increased the force from 3 kayaks to 6. Hasler began training. He had 34 Royal Marines to work with. He selected 12 for the final mission, plus 1 reserve. The training lasted months. The men learnt cold water survival, silent paddling, and how to attach limpet mines underwater. They practiced in Portsmouth Harbour at night. Hasler trained them hard because he knew most would not survive. The kayaks were Mark II cockles. Each was 15 feet long with a flat plywood bottom and canvas sides. They could fold for storage in a submarine. Each cockle carried 2 men, 8 limpet mines, paddles, a compass, rations for 6 days, and weapons. The magnetic limpet mines held 9 pounds of explosives with a timed fuse. Once attached below the waterline, they would detonate hours later and flood the ship. On October 30th, 1942, the submarine HMS Tuna left Scotland. Aboard were Hasler, his 12 Marines, the reserve man, and 6 cockles with codenames Catfish, Crayfish, Conger, Cuttlefish, Coalfish, and Cachalot. The voyage took a week. On the night of December 7th, HMS Tuna surfaced 10 miles south of the Gironde estuary. The sea was rough. Waves reached 15 feet. The Marines assembled the cockles on deck in the darkness. Cachalot was damaged coming through the submarine hatch. Canvas tore, the kayak could not deploy. Marines Ellery and Fisher stayed aboard the Tuna with the reserve man. 5 cockles launched, 10 men paddled into the night. The first hours went well. The Marines paddled in formation following Hasler in Catfish. At midnight, they hit the first violent tidal current. The estuary narrowed, water surged, waves crashed over the cockles. Coalfish, crewed by Sergeant Wallace and Marine Errett, disappeared. The others searched but found nothing. They continued. An hour later, they hit a second surge of water, stronger than the first. Conger capsized, Corporal Sheard and Marine Moffat went into the water. The temperature was near freezing. They tried to swim to shore. Sheard's body was never found. Moffat's body washed up 2 days later. Both had died from hypothermia. 3 cockles remained. Hasler led them upriver. At 4 a.m, they approached a German checkpoint with 4 patrol boats anchored in the channel. Hasler signaled the others to lie flat and paddle silently. They slipped past, but during the passage, cuttlefish crewed by Lieutenant McKinnon and Marine Conway became separated. They went ashore and tried to escape overland. German patrols captured them within 48 hours. 2 cockles left, Hasler and Marine Bill Sparks in catfish, Corporal Laver and Marine Mills in crayfish. 4 men out of the 10. They paddled through the night and hid at dawn in marshland near St. Estephe. German aircrew flew overhead, patrols were searching the riverbanks, the Marines had to lay motionless under camouflage nets. On December 9th, they paddled again. Progress was slow, the tide fought them, pulling water back towards the sea. They covered 25 miles and hid again. On December 10th, they passed more German ships and checkpoints. A signal lamp flashed from one ship. Hasler thought they'd been spotted. He and the others prepared to be fired upon. Nothing happened. The lamp went dark. On December 11th, they reached the area opposite Bordeaux harbour. They hid all day. That night, December 11th into December 12th, they would attack. At 9 p.m, both cockles entered the harbour. Lights lit the docks. German soldiers moved along the piers. Hasler counted the targets. 7 ships moored in rows. He signalled Laver and Mills to take the eastern side. Hasler and Sparks would take the western side. Catfish approached the first ship, a cargo vessel. Sparks held a limpet mine while Hasler attached the magnetic holder to the hull below the waterline. They placed 2 mines. They moved to the next ship, a tanker, 3 more mines. On the third ship, a German sentry leaned over the side and shined a flashlight directly at him. Sparks froze. The light stayed on him for 30 seconds. Sparks bent forward to cover the open cockpit with his camouflaged back. The sentry moved on. He'd not seen them. Catfish placed 8 limpets total on 4 ships. Crayfish placed their mines on the eastern side. By 1 a.m, both teams were finished. They paddled back downriver. At dawn, they hid near Bly. At 7 a.m, the first mine detonated. Then another, then more. Explosions echoed across Bordeaux. German troops swarmed the docks. Alarms sounded. The raid was complete. Hasler and Sparks destroyed their cockle and went inland. Laver and Mills did the same. The 4 men separated into pairs and began the 100-mile trek to Refec, where French resistance contacts were supposed to be waiting. Unfortunately, Laver and Mills were captured 2 days later. German patrols found them near a road. Both were interrogated, then transferred to Paris. They were executed under Hitler's commando order on March 23, 1943. Hasler and Sparks moved carefully. They walked at night and hid during the day. French civilians were helping. A farmer gave them dried cloves and food. Another farmer, Claudemir Pascari, asked Hasler to broadcast a coded message on the BBC when he returned to Britain. The message would confirm that they had survived. On December 18th, Hasler and Sparks reached Refec. They made contact with the Marie Claire escape line run by Mary Lindell, a 47-year-old Englishwoman who'd been a nurse in World War I. Lindell hid them in safe houses and arranged their route south. For 3 months, Hasler and Sparks moved through occupied France. They travelled by train to Lloyd, then Marseille, then Perpignan. At each stop, resistance members guided them. In February 1943, they crossed the Pyrenees on foot. The mountains were freezing. They walked for days. On February 23rd, they reached Spain. From there, they travelled to Gibraltar. On April 2, 1943, Hasler arrived back in Britain by plane. Sparks came by sea and arrived later. They were the only survivors. The BBC broadcast the coded message Hasler had promised the farmer. The chicken is tasty. The 2 chickens have arrived. Back in Bordeaux, the damage reports came in. 6 ships had been hit. The cargo ship Dresden sank to the harbour floor, its propeller damaged beyond repair. The freighter Alabama took 5 direct hits and was heavily damaged. The ship Portland suffered internal fire damage. Another cargo ship tilted onto its side and went down. 2 other ships sustained damage. Adolf Hitler was furious. He demanded to know how a children's boat had breached German defences, travelled 70 miles through enemy waters and destroyed his shipping without being detected. Even though most of the damaged ships were repaired within months, Britain had proven that even heavily defended German ports were vulnerable. Morale at home improved. For the Germans, the raid created panic. If kayaks could reach Bordeaux, what else could reach German positions? Churchill later said the raid shortened the war by 6 months. Historians still debate that claim, but what's not debated is the cost. 10 men launched from HMS Tuna. 2 returned. 6 were executed, 2 drowned. Hasler was awarded the Distinguished Service Order. Sparks received the Distinguished Service Medal. Laver and Mills were mentioned in dispatches, but could not receive their medals posthumously under the rules at the time. The Royal Marine Boom Patrol Detachment later became the Special Boat Service, one of Britain's elite Special Force units. Today, memorials to the Cockleshell Heroes stand in Britain and France. A walking trail traces the 100-mile escape route Hasler and Sparks followed. The only surviving cockle kayak, Cachalot, is displayed in a museum in Essex, and every year in Bordeaux, ceremonies remember the 10 Marines who paddled into history on a December night in 1942.